Hey everybody, it's Mr. Marshall at Stony Lane. Um, Last time we talked about how readers can think about something called symbolism inside of a longer chapter book. And we talked about how you think about an object that's coming up a lot inside your story, and then you think about how this object is used or what this object looks like, um, and then thinking about how that teaches you something about the story that you're reading. Usually, it's about how there's an object that you can see or touch, and it represents something that you can't see or can't touch, something invisible. Okay. Well, today, what I want to show you is how you can do the same kind of work without a lot of writing, right? Where it's a lot of it is just thinking. Okay. We're going to do some quick writing, but it's going to be really much quicker. And we're going to do this in a short text because sometimes this kind of work can happen inside of a picture book or a short story that you're reading. Okay, so let's try that. Okay, I'm going to read a story that maybe you know, maybe you don't know, it doesn't matter. It's called The Other Side by Jacqueline Woodson. This is a beautiful, beautiful book. Okay, I hope you enjoy it. The Other Side. Here we go. The Other Side. That summer, the fence that stretched through our town seemed bigger. We lived in a yellow house on one side of it. White people lived on the other. And Mama said, "Don't climb over that fence when you play." She said it wasn't safe. So, right there, the way that it says white people, it makes me think the person who's telling the story is not a white person. Okay? So, that summer, there was a girl who wore a pink sweater. Each morning, she climbed up on the fence and stared over at our side. Sometimes I stared back. She never sat on that fence with anybody, that girl didn't. Once, when we were jumping rope, she asked if she could play, and my friend Sandra said no, without even asking the rest of us. I don't know what I would have said. Maybe yes, maybe no. That summer, everyone and everything on the other side of that fence seemed so far away. When I asked my mama why, she said, "Because that's the way things have always been." Sometimes when me and mama went into town, I saw that girl with her mama. She looked sad sometime, that girl did. "Don't stare," my mama said. "It's not polite." So, I'm already starting to notice, and we're just a few pages in, that there's an object that we keep on seeing and we keep on hearing about, right? It's a fence. So I'm just gonna write fence. Okay, that's my object. It's the fence because the storyteller is talking about this fence like all the time on every single page. She mentions this fence, right? Um, so now the next thing I need to do is think about how does it look and how is it used. So I think, well, what are fences used for? Fences are used to separate things or people, right? They're to keep one neighbor on one side and the other on the other, right? So I'm going to just quickly jot separate. How does this fence look? Well, all fences are a little different. Let's take a look at the picture of this fence. Take a look at that fence. It's a long fence. It's really huge, isn't it? That means that it's probably really meant to do a good job of separating things, right? And it says that it said we lived on one we lived in a yellow house on one side of the fence and white people lived on the other, right? So who is this fence separating? It's separating people of different races. So like what invisible thing does that remind me of? Like I'm thinking, I don't know, like it's like these rules that people of one race need to be in one place and others in another, right? So let's keep reading and see if we can name this better. That's when we were jumping rope. Here we go. And you notice, like, let's go back. This is a page we read already. So here the girls are playing. They're jumping rope. And we see that this one girl is on one side of the fence, and she's kind of like hanging on the fence, isn't she? She's still separated by the fence, but she's kind of like touching it and kind of climbing on it, right? That's kind of so she's kind of climbing on being separated, right? If we can think of it that way. She's thinking about it. Let's keep going. It sounds like she doesn't want to be separated, right? Because she's kind of watching the other girls jump rope. And she even asked them if she could play. And they said no. Sandra said no. Let's keep going. It rained a lot that summer. You see that? It rained a lot that summer. On rainy days, that girl sat on the fence in a raincoat. She let herself get all wet and acted like she didn't even care. Sometimes I saw her dancing around in puddles, splashing and laughing. She sat on the fence in a raincoat. She's sitting on the fence. Mama wouldn't let me go out in the rain. That's why I bought you rainy day toys, my mama said. You stay inside here where it's warm and safe and dry. But every time it rained, I looked for that girl and I always found her somewhere near the fence. Somewhere near the fence. She's hanging out by this fence, but like it's kind of like she's touching it, right? She's near the fence. She wants to be with these other girls, right? But the fence is still separating them, isn't it? So, the fact that they're different races is what's separating them, isn't it? So there's some big words that we use about that. Like this in this story, it seems like the fence is a symbol for race, right? Race is separating them, but it's even bigger than the race. It's the fact that someone thinks that they should be separated because of this race. So it's sort of like this is racism is separating them. Racism is the idea that people of different races shouldn't be together. It's the idea that for whatever reason, like they don't belong together. But I think these girls want to belong together, right? At least the one that's the neighbor, right? There's another word for this. Segregation. Segregation is the idea that people of different races should totally be apart, right? And that's why in some places there were different schools and different restaurants and different stores and things like that for people of different races, right? Someplace in the middle of the summer, the rain stopped. When I walked outside, the grass was damp and the sun was already high up in the sky, and I stood there with my hands up in the air. I felt brave that day. I felt free. It's funny on this page, the storyteller doesn't even talk about the fence, but the picture does. It's right there. It's still there, even though she's not thinking about it. Oh, this next picture is going to make us think stuff. Ready? And then I smiled. We stood there looking at each other, smiling. It's nice up on this fence, Annie said. You can see all over. I ran my hand along the fence. I reached up and I touched the top of it. A fence like this was just made for sitting on, Annie said. She looked at me sideways. Ready for the picture? Get that picture. So they're both kind of touching this fence. They're kind of like, it's like they're not afraid of each other. They want to be together. Annie's even sitting on the fence. And Clover's touching the fence. Right? Like, so that's making me think it's not a fence, right? It's segregation, it's racism. Like they're kind of like, they don't want the fence to be there, right? Because they're sitting on it. They're not letting it separate them, right? Just like they probably don't want race to separate them, right? Racism to separate them. My mama says I shouldn't go on the other side. I said, my mama says the same thing, but she never said nothing about sitting on it. Well, neither did mine. These girls want to be friends, don't they? Take a look at this picture. Do you see them? They're sitting on the fence together. This fence is not separating them anymore, right? It's not, because they're together, because they've chosen to be together, right? So they've decided that race wasn't going to be something that was going to make their friendship be the kind where they can't be together, right? Take a look at this whole picture now. Look at that. Clover's mom is watching them, but she's not stopping them. I think she thinks that it's okay, right? And it is okay, isn't it? It's okay for people to be friends if they want to be friends, right? Some mornings my mama watched us. I waited for her to tell me to get down from that fence before I break my neck or something. But she never did. I see you made a new friend, she said. I nodded and Mama smiled. That summer, me and Annie sat on the fence and watched the whole wide world around us. That's pretty cool, right? They got to be friends. One day, Sandra and them were jumping rope near the fence, and we asked if we could play. I don't care, Sandra said. And when we jumped, Sandra and me were partners the way we used to be. But now Annie's playing with them too. Annie's jumping rope with them. Wait till you see this picture. It's going to make you think stuff. Are you ready? When we were too tired to jump anymore, we sat up on the fence. All of us. In a long line. Now I'm going to show you the picture. But when you're looking at the picture, remember, it's not just a fence. It means something else. Ready? Do you see that? All of them are sitting on the fence together. And they're different races. Like they know they're different races, but that's okay for them, right? Right? It's not separating them anymore. It's bringing them together. They're together now, even though they're different races. In fact, maybe even they know that they're different races and they're fine with it. They think that's fine. They think that's great, right? Someday somebody's going to come along and knock this old fence down, Annie said. And I nodded. Yeah, I said, someday. And that's the end. What a powerful last page, right? Someday somebody's going to come and knock this old fence over, or knock this old fence down, Annie said. Yeah, someday, I said. So I think they're thinking about how one day the fence won't need to be there because they want to be together. And one day maybe racism won't be there anymore. Maybe if they work hard, like if everyone worked hard just the way that these girls did, even though it might have been a challenge to be friends when everyone around them was telling them that they should be separated, right? So do you see what we just did? Do you see how we knew that it was a fence? Of course it was a fence. They were sitting on it. They couldn't just sit on the air. But it also meant something else, something invisible. Okay? We thought about how the fence really symbolized racism, segregation, right? We were thinking about that. Well, you can do that in a book. Anytime you see that there's an image that comes up a lot, you can think, what is this visible thing symbolizing that's invisible? And think about that invisible thing as you read on, or if you reread, or if you talk about this book, with a friend or your teacher, okay? That's going to give you a lot of power to think really good things inside of any book, okay? So why don't you try that, and I'll see you next time.